Lori here. I'm here today to film my January reading wrap up. I'm gonna have to be filming this in two parts because I am heading to ALA midwinter, and I just want to have most of the video filmed. Right now, at the time of this recording, I have actually read 12 books, which means I'm ahead on my Goodreads girl, which is amazing. And I actually had a really good start to the reading month. So let's dive in. I am going to start with the books for the Time Warp YA book club that I ran. The first book that I wound up reading for that was Warrior of the Wild by Tricia Levasseur. This book I actually really liked. I wound up giving this book 4.5 stars. I got this book not this year, but the previous year at New York City Comic Con. I really loved her previous series, the Daughter of the Pirate Queen series. I went into this one a little bit hesitant, but I actually really liked it. Basically follows this girl named Rashmira. I think I'm saying that correctly. And she lives in a society where you basically can you have a job, and the only way you get your job is if you pass your test, which is a competition of some sort. And she, unfortunately, due to some betrayal, winds up failing her test, which means she's not a member. She becomes exiled, and the only way that you can not be exiled anymore is if you do the job or the task that your community sets for you. And her task is to kill a god, which has never been done before. So she's exiled to the wild where she's never been, and she winds up actually having to try to execute her task. She winds up coming up with some she winds up finding a lot of people in the woods that she winds up connecting with. I really enjoyed this book. I thought this book was a perfect mix of fantasy but dystopian elements as well. Thought it was so solid. I really loved the pacing. I love the reading style. I love that even though this book focused on her and it was a very small cast of characters, I like the cast of characters in this novel. I thought the ending had some push and rush moments, which I could have done without, but overall I thought this was such a solid read, and I wound up giving it 4.5 stars. And then the next book that I wound up reading for the Time Warp YA book club was Illuminae by Amy Kaufman and Jay Kristoff. This series is a reread for me, and I have never listened to the audiobook before, and boy did I like it. This is one of the series that is sometimes hard to read because you go in knowing that everyone is basically might be a casualty, so it's really hard to become invested in anyone because you have a fear that they're going to just die. But I really wind up loving this book. I love the listening experience. I cannot wait to dive into the second book in February, which has my favorite romance is in that book. I love Hannah and Nick. So I'm really excited for that. But this one was just a pure listen, and I really wound up enjoying it. So then the first physical book that I read in 2020 was What to Say Next by Julie Buxom. I actually got this for a Christmas present late last year, so I actually wound up reading it. This book was just so fun. I really liked it. I thought it was such a solid read. It basically follows these two characters, David and Kit. David is dealing with a lot of ADHD or autism issues. It's never really said what he's dealing with, but the way you also get the point of view from his head, and his point of view was so interesting. So you're dealing with David, who is very analytical. It sounds like he has autism or a version of autism. And then you have Kit, who's dealing with the aftermath of her father's death. And they wind up making an unexpected connection that takes them on a very interesting journey that leads Kit and David to unexpected truths about themselves. I really like this book. I think I really loved David's character a little bit more, but by the end I think I understand Kit's character. I really just liked it. Thought it was a solid read, and I definitely want to read more by her in the future. I think Tell Me Three Things will be the Time Warp YA book club for the month of February, which is awesome, but I really love this. I love the dynamics between the characters. I love how this book really did focus on friendship and grief and a bunch of other different topics. So this book I wound up giving 4 stars. And then the next book that I wound up reading and completing was Nameless Queen, which is by sorry, I don't have a book of this. I have the e-arc. Rebecca McLaughlin. Another book that I was really happy that I finally got around to reading because it did come out in early 2020, and I actually was able to read it on my Kindle, which is one of my goals, to use my Kindle more. But I actually really wound up liking this book. The end, I think, was a little bit rushed and had some rushed elements, but it basically follows this character named Coin. And in this society, the king, there is no like succession plans, like blood based. But the king before the king or queen before he or she dies winds up saying a name, and whoever that person is named winds up getting a tattoo on their wrist, and that tattoo identifies the next ruler. So, shock to everybody, this girl named Queen, who's a part of the nameless class, which means you don't have a name, you don't have parents, winds up getting this tattoo on her wrist, and she winds up becoming the queen. Um, and it's a lot of political drama. It's a lot of like mysteries and issues about the thing. What is happening to the nameless class that keeps on having them be murdered? There's a lot of political drama inside it when Queen goes to the palace. There's some unexpected familia dynamics which I really liked. And there is a bunch of quotes about friendship in this book. Like a bunch of quotes about friendship that just warmed my heart and I really liked it. There was a relationship between Queen and an older man, like a father figure that I really liked. And it was just really, really good. I thought the end, again, had a little bit of rushed moments, which is why I only gave it 4 stars. But I'm definitely going to check out book 2. This book really impressed me, and I really, really enjoyed it. So the next book that I wound up picking up was Keystone, which was an Entangle read pick that I got sent to me for review. And here is a very, very pretty picture. I'm going to be very good and read my Entangle reads, physical reads, like a lot sooner than I normally do. So this one was one that I wound up picking up. And it was a mystery thriller that I actually wound up really, really liking. I thought the pacing at the end, again, I had some struggles with the pacing in general in this book. But it basically follows this character, and this is definitely like a dystopian world where their public face is very much like how you are judged, and there's a social stock currency that basically says like if you're on the top or the bottom, and something happened that winds up setting this character to the bottom, and she winds up getting recruited by this by school, and she has to like go to school, but she's also like encountering heists. And it was a really, really interesting book. I thought the pacing in this book was a little bit weird at points, and it was hard to like push through because I didn't feel like there's enough tension in this book. There was a couple plot twists that I totally saw coming. So I only wound up giving this book like 3.5 stars, but I will definitely read more because I think as a first book in the series, it took me a while to understand the world. It's also a book that like you are not you as a reader have to learn so much that the main character already knows. So you kind of have to like take a step back and be like, okay, what is actually going on? So I think that was like, made me feel like a little bit disconnected. There were some plot twists that I totally saw coming, but overall I wound up really liking it. And I thought that it was a very interesting take on like a dystopian mystery thriller. So I really wound up enjoying that read, and I wound up giving that read 3.5 stars. Wound up picking up was Shadowfrost by Coco Ma. I wound up reading this. This was a book that I got from Book Expo this past year. I will admit, I liked this. I didn't love it. I only wound up giving this read 3 stars. I felt like the pacing was hard for me to get behind, and there was so many characters in this book and so many point of views, and I just didn't feel like they were specific enough for me to feel invested in them all. I like the main character, but also like the point of views weren't distinct enough. But it basically follows this society where there's a black villain or like a creature villain that is basically killing the community, and the princess goes on the run to try to kill the villain. And she takes a cast of characters with her, and I love the world. I thought the world was interesting. I really did like the plot. At points, I thought the pacing was a little bit off, and I didn't feel as connected to the characters. So I do wind up giving this only 3 stars. It was probably my least favorite read of the month, I'll be a little bit honest, but I would consider reading book 2. I might just have to get the audiobook and kind of reread it and see if the characters become a little bit more clear in my mind. But that being said, I thought the end of this book, there was some elements between some of the female characters that I really enjoyed. So I definitely want to see what happens next with the characters. But for overall, this was not the book I was expecting. So I only wound up giving it 3 stars, but I would definitely consider reading the sequel in the future. The next book that I wound up reading was actually The Lady Rogue by Jen Bennett. I have heard so many mixed reviews about this book, but overall, I really loved it. Like, so loved it. I thought this book was so fun. It was basically an adventure story. Jen Bennett normally writes romance books, contemporary, but this was her first dive into historical fiction. Boy, did I really like it. It basically follows this girl named Theodora whose dad is like a treasure hunter and like an artifact hunter, and she winds up being in Istanbul. And her tutor gets really annoyed with her and winds up leaving her there, and she really doesn't know how she's going to get out of Istanbul because her dad's on an adventure. When a friend from her past winds up coming to her and telling her that her dad's in danger, and they have to go on an adventure to try to find him. I love this book. This book was so fun to read. It was such a fast-paced adventure story. I love the romance. I love the characters. I love the unique setting in this book. It was a book that honestly really surprised me. I wound up giving this book 5 stars. I know that there was a lot of mixed reviews about it, but I wound up really liking it. And it just was the perfect read. I think I read it in like less than 2 days. I love the romance between the characters. I love the mystery. I sometimes struggle with Kerri Maniscalco's writing, and this book also did deal with Vlad the Impaler or Count Dracula. I love the myth in this so much. So it was really interesting. I really hope we get a sequel because I really love these characters. These characters totally captured my heart. So I wanted this. This was definitely my first 5-star read of the month, but definitely not my last. So the next book that I wound up reading was this was actually a surprise. This was a audiobook called Song of the Crimson Flower by Julie C. Dow. Now, normally I read books from authors in publication order and series and companion books in the correct order. This one I just wound up picking up from my Libby app because I saw it and I could just borrow it. And I was doing a massive clean of my room, and I literally listened to this book in like less than 2 days. But it is book point 2.5 in her series. The first one is Rise of the Thousand Lanterns, and then there's another one that I didn't wind up reading. This book, however, I really liked. Follow these 2 characters. One is a female leader, or like the daughter of a female the daughter of a leader in a community, and the other point of view is a healer who is like an apprentice healer. And their paths wind up crossing because the apprentice healer's stepbrother or like foster brother is going to be married to this girl. Little does the girl know, there has been some issues with her current boyfriend that she is unaware of, and it kind of sets them on a very much like a course of like mutual hate, I'll say that. And then something winds up happening that winds up leading these characters on an adventure that they could never have predicted. And boy, was this book a fun read. I absolutely loved the characters in this book. It was a highlight read for me. It was so fun. Such a fun adventure story. I'm doing a really bad job of explaining this book, but I really love the character dynamics. It was like a hate to love romance, but also a flash from the past romance. I thought that the myths and the myths that were created in the story were super interesting. It was a really fun read. It wasn't that long. I think this book altogether was like not even 300 pages, which is why I read through it so fast. But I really wound up liking it. I'm definitely going to go back and read the other books in this series. I do definitely have the first one, and I think my friend says she might have the second one, so maybe I might be able to pick that up in the next couple of months. But one up really liking this, and one up giving this book 4 stars. The next book I'm going to chat about is, let's see. Oh, this was another book that was a total surprise, and it was actually a book that I got from New York City Comic Con this year from First Second, and it's called Go with the Flow. Here's a picture. Reading blog because I wound up reading it on a day home when I was heading home from the city, but it basically follows these 5 characters, and it deals with female health issues, like, but also a lot about activism. I talked about this in my reading vlog a lot, and if you're not interested in this stuff, just fast forward a couple of minutes. But it basically follows these 4 or 5 girls. They're a group of friends, and they wind up dealing with a lot of issues dealing with their periods, and there's not enough in their school. The tampon and pad machines in their school are always empty, and even when they are empty, you have to pay 5 cents for them or something like that. And the girls are kind of over being considered that's not a priority for the schools. So it kind of goes in an adventure of like learning about that process, but also it has to do with a lot of activism. I thought it was very, very educational. It was the first book that really ever like addressed those topics, and I really liked it. I think that it should be a book that all health classes should have if you have to read it, boys and girls both. I thought that it was so well done. I don't even have a copy of it anymore because I wound up giving it to a science teacher in my school. Natalie, if you're watching this, I hope you like the book. But I just wound up really, really liking it. It was a very, very fast-paced read. It dealt with a lot of friendship dynamics. It dealt with activism. It dealt with social media. I really wound up liking it. And I would definitely read more by this author pair in the future. And I wound up giving this book 5 stars. I just thought it was a great read and so educational. I think that all schools should have a copy of it, especially if you teach health. So if you're a health teacher, I highly recommend you get that book. And then the next book that I wound up finishing reading was The Guinevere Deception by Kiersten White. This was an Owl Crate book for the month of December. And again, I actually wound up really liking this book. I thought that it was such a unique King Arthur retelling. I found it to be so interesting. This one was really interesting. It basically follows Queen Guinevere, who's actually like a shapeshifter, or like, I think it says she's a shapeshifter. Yeah, I think she's like a shapeshifter, and she winds up coming to town to save Arthur from an evil that is rising. This book again was so interesting. I love the dynamics between the characters. I really love the setting of Camelot. I loved the characters that we met that you may know of if you've read or seen King Arthur retellings in the past. I love the various settings in this book. I thought it was interesting about Merlin's role in this story. Very interesting. And I love the dynamics between Arthur and Guinevere a lot. And I really like Guinevere as a character. I thought the end of this book was a little bit confusing, but also a little bit predictable. So I only wound up giving this book like 4 stars, but I will definitely be checking out the second book in the series because this book definitely impressed me, like by far impressed me. It was the first King Arthur book I've read in a while, but it was definitely one that did impress me, and I definitely enjoyed it. So that one I wound up giving a 4 star. 4 or 4.5 stars. I think at the end I just felt a little bit rushed and I had to like reread the last 50 pages like a couple of times to understand what was going on. But definitely left me off on a cliffhanger, and I definitely want back too. The next book that I wound up reading was actually probably one of my favorite reads of the month, and that is The Unmapped Chronicles, Casper Tak, and the Everdark Wings. Guys, this book was adorable. I like raved about this in my reading vlog. If you've checked that out, I simply adored it. It basically follows this boy named Casper Tak, and he is the epitome of not wanting to go on an adventure. He loves his lists. He lives with his parents in England, and his parents are like not like him. They are very much not rule-based, and they just want him to have fun. He's kind of living at a boarding school that no one really likes him. He's kind of dealing with that a lot. He's a lot bullied. One day, his society is dealing with a lot of weather issues that are bad. Like, there's a lot of stuff going on in England and all around the world that have to do with some weather dynamics. They think it is caused by global warming, which, you know, is a real thing in our society. But unexpected to him, there is a whole other world that basically controls our weather. And he winds up going on an unexpected adventure to this land, and he has to wind up going to save it with a girl named Everlade. And it was adorable. I, as a person, am not the bravest, but seeing him as a main character made me think I could be brave. I love the dynamics about friendship and about being confident and standing up for yourself. The world building in this book was standout, such a highlight. I did not want to put this book down. I love the cast of characters that we met. I love the magical world. I love this book. It was really, really fun. I really have enjoyed the Keeper of the Lost Cities series. If you like the Keeper of the Lost Cities series and you were looking for something else to read, like in the downtime when we wait for the next book, this is a series I highly recommend you pick up. It is such a fascinating world that I really, really loved, and I really hope we get a second book because it really impressed me. The last book that I wound up reading up until this point, right now it is January 24th, so I'll probably read a couple more books before the end of the year, but is Hidden Meaning, The Secrets of Mary's Bookshop. A couple of years ago, I started reading Cozy Mysteries. This is one that I wound up picking up this summer with my cousin when I was down in Virginia. Little did I know this was book actually 24 in the series. I like this book. I didn't love it. The one thing I did like about it is that this mystery really had nothing to do with murder, and it was more sleuthing and mystery based. Um, it did have a lot to do with like God and God fearing characters, and religion had a really, really big part in this, which is not always my jam. I'm not sure if I'm gonna read more in this series. I do have one other book from like this collection, but it's like a different series. This is The Secrets of Mary's Bookshop, and I have another one. Um, but I felt like the pace was weird. I felt like I couldn't really make any real predictions because by the point the predictions could happen, I knew who the killer was, or I thought I knew who the killer was. But I really did like the dynamics between the characters. I love the small town setting. But yeah, so that's my thought on this read. I'm also reading in the middle of a couple of reads, which I will talk about later in the month. But I just wanted to go in here and film this video, and the next time you see me, I will have returned from ALA, and I will have a bunch more reads to share with you guys. So, I'll talk to you guys then. Bye. Guys, Lori here. I am back from ALA, and I just want to come up here and wrap up this wrap up. It's January 31st, so I am back. I had a great time at ALA. The month of February is going to be featuring all the reads that I got from ALA. I'll be doing a bunch of book hauls for you, but I'll talk about that in a later video. So the book that I wound up completing during ALA was The Stormkeeper's Island by Catherine Doyle. I literally don't have the book because I left the book at my friend's house because she was sending me back a bunch of books. I will admit, I like this book, but I didn't love it. I think I had been coming off a kick of the Memoir Chronicles that I really adored. But it basically follows this young boy named Finn, and he is forced to go live with his grandfather after something happens to his mom. And he winds up going to this island and realizes that his grandpa is the stormkeeper of this island, and he is involved in a mythical war that Finn knew nothing about. And Finn gets sucked into this mystery. I really did like the characters. I thought the world building was super interesting, but I didn't feel as the pace of the story was a little bit awkward at points, and it wasn't as paced as effectively as I wanted it to be. But I liked it. I thought that the world building was I liked the world building in the story. I like the characters. They definitely grew on me, but it didn't capture my attention. It wasn't a fast-paced story. It wasn't a world that I loved. I'll say that. But I did like it enough to complete it. I would give this read 3 stars. I do have the sequel. I did like how mythology came into it at points, so I ended up giving this read 3 stars. Then, when I finished this, I was at ALA. So the next book I picked up was a book that I got from ALA, which you will see in my haul later in the month, which is What I Like About You by Marissa Cantor. This is an arc that comes out in April 2020. Guys, I really, really like this book, and I love the concept of this book. I really enjoyed the characters. Wound up giving it 4 stars, but I'm basically gonna gush about this book for a little bit. So it basically follows this girl named Haley, and she is involved in the book community. She's a bookstagrammer, she's a blogger, she's very, very involved in that. Her life is kind of in like upheaval. She winds up having to move in with her grandfather because her parents are like documentary filmmakers, and they are going on a world adventure, and she can't come. She wants to finish her senior year and be prepped for college. So she winds up moving in with her grandfather, and has a very, very big social presence. She has a best friend online, and by some weird coincidence or shake of fate, she winds up meeting her best friend in real life, but he doesn't know about it. So she's kind of dealing with meeting this boy, still talking to him online, but the book elements of this book, like arcs and creating posts, she deals with a lot of like social anxiety disorders. It was just a really, really fun read. If you're a book lover, I love this book. I thought the romance was super fun. I thought the family dynamics were really interesting. I just loved, the friends you meet online, the friends you meet not in real life. I have a bunch of friends like that. They talked a lot about BookCon. They talked about arcs. They talked about blogging and Instagram. And guys, I just loved it. I mean, I think that the characters sometimes were a little bit predictable, and the romance had some cheesy moments, but I really liked it, and I'm definitely gonna wind up keeping this book for my personal collection because it was just fun. It was just a fun read, and I really hope you consider checking it out. I think it would be a great read to read around BookCon. It's also set around like a year. It's not set like in like a month. It's set like a year-long book. But I love the characters, I love the romance, and it was just such a fun read. The last book that I finished reading in the month of January was Aurora Burning by Amy Kaufman and Jay Kristoff. I just finished this book today. I did get this arc at ALA. Guys, this was like one of the most highly anticipated books at that convention, and I was so happy to finally get my hands on it. I loved Aurora Rising like so much. I like this book, and I think that it always happens with second book in a series, especially when you change the game. And I think that that's what these two authors did. They changed the game. But the one thing I did love is that we really learned a lot more information about a lot of the characters. Some situations with the characters were shocking to me, and I was really, really surprised by it. But the pacing at moments was like a little bit awkward. I just was not as clear as what was going on. What I did like, and I really hope that this is in like the official book, they do give you a very, very like a good like I would say like 6-page summary summarizing the previous book in the series, which I really liked. I still think I probably should have reread the first book, which I think I might actually do when the physical copy of this comes out, which comes out in May. I definitely am going to want to reread it, but I really liked it. I wound up giving it 4.5 stars. I think the structure of this was not as tight as their first book, and I think that they had to do a lot of different things structurally that really made this book a little bit different, but I still love the characters. I love all the information that we got. It was definitely a book that made me think, and I really enjoyed it. So I wound up giving this book 4.5 stars. So that is all the books that I finished reading in the month of January. I wound up reading 15 books, which is crazy town. But I'm really happy that I'm keeping my reading game up, and I'm just happy with that. I think some of my highlight reads of the month was definitely the Unmapped Chronicles. I really liked What I Like About You. I also really did enjoy Aurora Burning. But yeah, so those are just some of the highlight reads that stood out to me. And I'm going to be back tomorrow with my February reading plans. And I hope you guys check out that video. Talk to you guys later. Bye.